Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. 7 people are now vying to become the next leader of the BC Conservative Party. The latest to join the race, the former head of Save On Foods, Daryl Jones. We're asking you, what do you make of the race so far and who stands out for you? After 12:30, just a few months away from FIFA World Cup, and is our region ready to welcome the estimated 350,000 visitors? We'll talk to the Surrey and White Rock Board of Trade about preparations, and we'll take your calls. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. First, an update to a story we brought you yesterday. BC billionaire Jim Pattison is facing backlash over the potential sale of a Pattison-owned warehouse in Virginia to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for use as an ice processing facility. BC Green Party leader Emily Lowen is calling for a boycott of Jim Pattison-owned businesses. Meanwhile, Attorney General Nikki Sharma said yesterday that Canadian companies should, quote, think about their role when considering whether to do business with ICE. This hour, the Hanover, Virginia County Board of Supervisors is holding a meeting, and it will discuss this potential sale. Meanwhile, there's now a statement from the Jim Pattison company that's involved. It states, in early 2024, Jim Pattison Developments completed construction of an industrial building in Ashland, Virginia, for company operations. When operating needs changed, the property was publicly listed for lease or sale, and an offer was accepted to sell the building to a U.S. government contractor. Sometime later, we became aware of the ultimate owner and intended use of the building. This transaction is still subject to certain approvals and closing conditions. We remain committed to complying with all applicable laws and regulations as we work to divest this asset. As a matter of policy, we do not comment on private transactions. However, we understand that the conversation around immigration policy and enforcement is particularly heated and has become much more so over the past few weeks. We respect that this issue is deeply important to many people. End quote. That statement from Jim Pattison Developments. Now, the Jim Pattison Group also owns Save On Foods. And meanwhile, the union, United Food and Commercial Workers Local 1518, representing 28,000 workers, issued its own statement. It states UFCW 1518 has written to the Jim Pattison Group about the decision to sell a Pattison-owned warehouse for conversion into an ice processing facility. We stand firmly against practices that dehumanize people anywhere, including the harms reported by victims impacted by ICE. Frontline workers in BC had no role in this decision. Boycotts that cut hours or wages shift the harm onto workers who can't afford it. We've raised our concerns directly with Save On Foods leadership. UFCW 1518 stands with immigrant workers and will always defend working people. Okay, that statement from the union. We did receive a lot of emails to this show yesterday. Suzanne writes, supporting or boycotting companies is a significant way we can have our say. Who cares who buys what building? Well, we don't have a say in how someone spends their money, but we have a say in how we spend our money. Joanne writes, I think that is a big ask for a boycott that would hurt local people's jobs. Hopefully, Pattison will rethink his ethical choice based on public outrage. Gail wrote that she was appalled by the statements by BC Green leader Emily Lowen. She wrote, she doesn't have her facts right, and she uses inflammatory language. I find her words and calling for a boycott of Pattison's companies embarrassing, equivalent to Trump. Meanwhile, Erica writes from South Surrey, I'm a BC Green and I did not vote for Emily, but I applaud her bringing this up. I remind Jim Pattison to research Carney's great speech on Havel's essay of the green grocer. It is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. Stephen writes from Telkwa, while I agree with the moral outrage over the actions of ICE agents, I do not agree that we should call on Pattison to shoulder the cost of our moral outrage. If we're serious about combating the ICE agenda, we need to dig into our own wallets to support organizations fighting that battle. And finally, R writes, Jim Pattison is not supporting ICE. He happens to own a building they want. The U.S. government could just expropriate it, so Pattison should sell for a good price and bring those dollars back to BC's economy. As I said, lots of emails that came in to bctoday@cbc.ca. You can keep sending them to us on anything that you hear on the show. Again, that's bctoday@cbc.ca. Twelve minutes past 12 o'clock now here on BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, to BC politics now, and 7 candidates now in the race for the BC Conservative Party leadership. The position is open after former leader John Rustad stepped down in December. There are just about a couple of weeks left to register as a candidate, and the new leader is scheduled to be selected May 30th at the party's leadership convention. We're taking your calls. What do you make of the BC Conservative leadership race so far? And what stands out for you? Who stands out for you? Which candidate? You can call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or dial 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. 1-800-825-5950. You can also email, as I said, bctoday@cbc.ca. You can also leave a comment on our TikTok Live. Joining me now from Victoria is Rob Shaw. He's a political correspondent for CHEK News, a regular columnist as well on CBC's All Points West and Radio West programs. Rob, welcome back to the show. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
We'll go through the names in just a moment, but overall, how would you describe the candidates in the race that we're seeing so far?
Crowded. I mean, 7 names is a lot.
Yeah.
And I think there's at least 3 or 4 more that are kind of rumored and around out there. So there's a lot of interest. I think it speaks to the fact that there's a feeling in the BC Conservatives that whoever wins this leadership race has a real shot at defeating Premier David Eby's NDP government in the next election because of how much baggage the NDP is picking up. So this isn't just a race to be the opposition leader. A lot of candidates frame it as the race to be the next premier, and that interests a lot of people. There's only a couple so far who are actually MLAs. And so you've got Peter Milobar and you have Sheldon Clare. The rest are outsiders.
Yeah.
So you see this kind of influx of people who want to join the Conservatives, who maybe in the past weren't Conservatives, or if you're a conspiracy theorist within the Conservatives, maybe they're outsiders wanting to take over the party, which is a kind of a theme that is bubbling around this leadership race too. So it's a very interested, crowded, diverse field so far.
Diverse is right, and yes, crowded with 7, and as you say, more rumored to come, but 2 current MLAs, Sheldon Clare and Peter Milobar. What do you make of that there are these outsiders coming in? Like, what does that say about what direction each of these candidates want to take the party in?
There's 2 parts to people who want to get involved in the Conservative leadership race. One is the idea of being able to whip together the membership of the party or take over the membership of the party by bringing in your own folks, a mass membership sign up that could reflect your values. The other is managing the caucus of Conservative MLAs at the legislature, which we know from the many, many stories of turmoil and infighting in there is like herding cats, right? And so you have fewer people inside caucus, I think, partly because they've been in the middle of this turmoil and this hurricane, and for some, they're looking for someone outside to come in and get them out of this rut of meetings that go forever and resignations and firings and drama. So there's an advantage, I think, to some of the outsiders. You have someone like Ian Black, who's a former BC Liberal cabinet minister, who says, I was in the heyday of the Gordon Campbell government. I know how to run a party and I know how to lead. So there's the appeal to that. You have Carolyn Elliott, who is a political pundit, who says, I have the profile. I have my finger on the tip of what people are talking about in the Conservative movement, this kind of future of cultural conservatism. So she thinks an outsider is good. You have Daryl Jones, who's like, I'm a businessman. I spent 49 years at Save On Foods. I ran the company as president. I can come in and run the province like an economy. So those folks bring kind of like a sort of cachet from the outside that you could whip this group into shape and present them as a government in waiting, which is the big challenge for the Conservatives, to look less like a ragtag group of weirdos talking about ostriches and soji and stuff, and more like a real group of folks who could take over government ministries and run the province. And that's, I think, where the outsiders kind of bring in a bit of cachet.
It is interesting to see the headlines changing, right? Because you're right, just a few months ago, any headline to do with the BC Conservative Party was about John Rustad and divisions and fractures within the party. But now it certainly has changed to looking at who these candidates are. Let's just go through some of them. I'll put out the numbers again, asking our audience, what do you make of the race for the leadership of the BC Conservatives, and what direction could the party go in? Who stands out for you? Our numbers are 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Again, 1-800-825-5950, and just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. My guest is political columnist, political correspondent Rob Shaw. He's with CHEK News, regular columnist as well on CBC Radio. Okay, so we've gone, you mentioned Daryl Jones, so we've talked about Peter Millibar, Caroline Elliott, Ian Black, and Sheldon Clare.
We missed Yuri Fulmer.
Yes,
I think we got to throw him in.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a businessman also who comes from the outside, who says, I know how to run a business. I can run government. But he also ran as a BC Conservative candidate in the last election. So I think he brings a little bit more of a cachet in saying that I've already fought on this side. And people who are already MLAs like Peter Millibar, they bring that cachet too, but they also bring baggage. So he used to be a BC Liberal when he was first elected in 2017, then BC United, then BC Conservative. And some people say in the Conservatives, this is a pure new right-wing phenomenon. This shouldn't be diluted or taken over by those old BC Liberals and those United folks who want to drag us back to this old party. You know, this is something new and let's move on. And so people bring in different parts of their history that influences the race as well. But you could flip that around, and for Peter Millibar, he has, for example, he's been elected 8 times to city council, to mayor and Kamloops.
Mayor, yeah.
And so he's saying, I was a BC Liberal because the BC Liberals were the party for center-right folks. I'm not going to be ashamed of that. And he flips that around too, and that's part of the dialogue in the race.
And before I go to our caller, Maria, Warren Ham in Joslyn.
Yes, that's right. He's a businessman up there as well. And he was one of the first to launch too. He has a bit of a lower profile, but for a lot of these folks, we're waiting to see the deadline of February 15th, but also there's a lot of costs that come to run, around $110,000 in sort of fees, and they are staggered. And the real date for a lot of folks is kind of around April, where the first 50,000 becomes due, and then sort of mid-April, late April, when another 60,000 becomes due. And so within that is the kind of pay-to-play period. Some folks may stick around. I expect this list to be whittled down by more than half by the time we reach kind of the end of April. Okay.
A little less crowded, by the time we get to April. Our numbers again, 604-669-3733. 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. What do you make of the BC Conservative leadership race so far? Who stands out for you? Maria is on the line from Victoria. Hi there, Maria.
Oh, hi. I have to admit, I do not know what the group of candidates are. I don't know.
There's a lot of them, yeah.
I don't follow that. But I did hear Mr. Shaw say that he thought that this was going to be, this person could potentially be the next premier of the province. And I think that that's passing strange, because this is still a very fractured party. I think we're going to see another party emerge. I see Dallas Brody's bouncing around with her one BC party, but I think the Liberals may reconstitute themselves in this global environment, I don't understand why anyone would vote conservative when you see what's going on down south, when you see the what's going on in Alberta, when you see what's even happening in our own province, where the party just can't get it together, and I don't think they will in time for the next election.
A couple of points there, Maria. Thank you very much. Is the BC Conservative Party name, is it too tainted now, Rob?
Well, for starters there, and there's a couple good questions, the BC Liberals can't be reconstituted because the name is owned by BC United. BC United still exists on paper with leader Kevin Falcon. He's sitting on it to park it as part of the deal with the Conservatives to not split the center right. So no one can resurrect the BC Liberals right now. Yes, there's a fracture on the far right, one BC. I think whoever becomes leader will probably try to make some outreach to those folks, as well as Eleanor Sturko and Amelia Boltby, who are Conservatives who left the caucus, to try to unite it. It is possible that there's a united right. It's a possibility they're still fractured. That's going to be up to the next leader. It's one of the big challenges they're going to face.
Yeah, and interesting. What about the point that there could be another party coming out of those, those other voices that you mentioned?
Sure, it's possible. We have a legislature right now with a lot of independents and a lot of other, and a very slim one-seat majority by the NDP. So it's more attractive for some people to look at the influence they can have in the legislature now than, say, a super majority for one party, where if you want to start your own or you want to be independent, no one's ever going to hear from you again for 4 years. So it is entirely possible, depending on who wins. The direct, like, for example, if a moderate, maybe like a Peter Milobar, a more moderate conservative wins, you may see some people in the further right break off and do something else, or maybe they are brought in. Like it's the real question of the race is, can you unite the right?
Yeah, really interesting question. Sabriana is up next from Burnaby with a question for Rob. Hi, Sabriana.
Thank you for getting my name correctly.
I'm glad. I'm very glad that I did. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, no worries. I just wanted to ask a question about that kind of far side of the right there that involves with outside money. We're having a lot of talk of a separatist movement. There's historic evidence for, American money piling into things. Elon Musk interfered and gave a lovely speech to the far-right party in Germany that was condemned. So just correlation to that. Like, what are we dealing with?
In terms of outside influence?
Yeah, our economy is very close. A lot of people have properties on both sides of the border,
Yeah. And so in particular in BC politics, what is the influence of, it sounds like the U.S. Okay. Thank you very much, Sabriana. Take care. Yes, Rob.
Right, thank you.
Outside influence, let's focus on BC politics. I guess you touched on the economy there. But.
I mean, to give, I guess, credit to the NDP in 2017 for eliminating corporate and union donations, you can't run a super PAC in British Columbia during an election race that funnels money from outside entities into a campaign. You can't have one very wealthy donor or appear and cut a gigantic check like in the United States to fund an entire campaign. You have to, there's limits. And corporations and unions can't do that. And in the Conservative leadership race, there is a requirement from Elections BC that anyone who donates has to reach the below the limit. The party can take some money. It takes 20% to fund itself. And I'm not saying it is not an influence, but I think it's an influence outside of financial now. It's a cultural thing. It's a conservative phenomenon of success in the United States under Trump. I use the word loosely because for some people it's not a success, but he did win, and Republicans do hold, majorities and in the House and Congress, and so I think like it's kind of an aspirational part of the cultural conservative movement in British Columbia and Canada to mimic the winning tactics, but you won't have the same financial kind of dynamic in the United States here. You could have American associated groups funding advertising campaigns about issues or kind of leading it like that, but you won't find, like a one candidate smoking a cigar with $100 bill funded from some gigantic industrialist from the United States. We kind of have got away from that now.
Okay, and monocle. Don't forget monocle.
In monocle, that's right. The Mr. Peanut hat and everything. Yeah.
I have an email here from Rob in Chilliwack. If I was forced to choose a new leader of the BC Conservatives, it would be Daryl Jones. You can't sit as a BC United or Liberal member for months and months and criticize John Rustad like a few of the candidates, Black, Millibar, and Elliott, and then all of a sudden you run to the BC Conservatives and want to lead the party. Where are their morals or values? I admire former BC United members who ran as independents. This looks like nothing more than a BC United or Liberal coup or takeover of the Conservatives. The right-wing faction of the BC Conservatives will vote for one BC, splitting the vote. What do you make of that viewpoint? Yeah.
Well, look, I think we have operated in British Columbia for a long time as almost like a two-party state, right? We've had the NDP and the center-right party, the Socreds, the Liberals, the United, now the Conservatives. If you were to take the 7,000 members that exist in the BC Conservatives right now at the start of this leadership race, and the smaller group within that who consider themselves pure Conservatives, and just leave it at that, you would not defeat the NDP in the next election. And I think that's something that Conservatives are starting to realize, is that the pure part of them, the OG Conservatives, the original founders of this clubhouse, you have to appeal to other people to defeat the NDP when it's a moderate New Democrat party. You have to bring in BC Liberals. You have to bring in New Democrats who are unhappy. You have to bring in people from the far right, or you're not going to win. Like, it's just that simple. And that is why we see almost all of the candidates talking about a bigger tent party, about appealing to folks who aren't in politics right now, have never identified as being conservative, are dissatisfied New Democrats, are former BC Liberals. There is a subsection of the Conservatives who would rather lose and hold on to the original vision of the party. Okay. But that's not going to win you the next election, unfortunately.
Rob Shaw is my guest as we discuss the BC Conservative Party leadership race. And let's take another call here now to Rob Shaw. And Robert is on the line in Brentwood Bay. What do you think of the Conservative race so far? And does anybody stand out for you, Robert?
No, not really. But I don't vote Conservative, so I'm just calling to say that this party, the Conservatives now, they ran for decades under a Liberal banner, which they were not, obviously. I would like to see whoever has the highest moral fiber elected. Like, it just seems a lot of these candidates are motivated by their principle. Anyway, I would just like to see somebody of high moral fiber, and I won't be voting for the party. I prefer Green, as we need to save this world before it's gone. Anyway, that's pretty much what I want to say. Thank you. Looking
for a candidate with high moral values. Thank you very much for your call. And an email here from Gary, who writes another differing view of Daryl Jones. Too close to Jim Pattison. He loves, quote, power and would support big businesses like Jimmy before anything else. I have about 45 seconds left. We're in a TV ad break right now, but I want to make sure everybody hears your answer to this, Rob. So Daryl Jones, who was, as you said, with Save On Foods for many years, was president for, I think he said, 13 years. He announced his candidacy yesterday, and this at a time, on the same day as the news really made headlines around Jim Pattison and the Pattison Group's potential sale of a warehouse in Virginia to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for potential use by ICE as a processing facility. Backlash against Jim Pattison for that. We read some emails this afternoon, and I'll get your thoughts on that in just a second here. And welcome back to our TV audience. And so, Rob, what are your thoughts on Daryl Jones? He was questioned about this. He has a connection to Save On Foods, to the Pattison Group, and he was asked, what are your thoughts on the potential sale of this warehouse for use by ICE?
Yeah, he's an interesting candidate because he's not political. He hasn't been part of a party before. He hasn't run for office before. He has this story of working himself up through the stockroom, but then he also has the connection to Jimmy Pattison and Save On Foods, and he wears a little bit of that despite being retired now and not responsible for that decision. The NDP came out and called him the grocery gouger, as a nickname the other day, which I guess is one step up from the Hamburglar. It's not a very inventive nickname, but the grocery gouger, because they said here's a guy
Alliteration.
he ran a grocery store and they raised prices of groceries and he's out to gouge you. I don't know if that sticks, but he is entering a world of politics where things he's not even responsible for are going to be held against him and used to attack him and discredit him. So his connection to Jimmy Pattison is a double-edged sword, I guess. He's a business icon, but in the news for some negative headlines right now, for sure.
Rob, really good to watch all of this happening with you. And so I'm sure we'll touch base again in the next few weeks, looking at April to see what happens in the race there. And of course, May is when they do choose a new leader. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Rob Shaw, political correspondent for CHEK News, and a regular columnist for CBC's All Points West and Radio West. It is 12:31 now. You're with BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks for being with us. And we'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. And then we will talk about preparations for the World Cup. Do you think our region is ready? And what do you think that time will look like for you? If you're a business owner, if you're a resident, are there any events you'd like to participate in? I'd love to hear from you. That's coming up in our next half hour. Right now, it is time for a CBC News update.
Good afternoon. Premier David Eby says he talked to Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Prime Minister Mark Carney today about the proposed pipeline to BC's north coast. Smith, meanwhile, told reporters there's more work to do in consulting with local First Nations. She also said the pipeline route will be submitted to the Federal Major Projects Office by June and hopes the project will be approved by the fall. Surrey police are investigating another suspected extortion-related shooting. Shots were fired at a business along 120th Street just before 4 this morning. There was no one inside at the time and no one was injured. And the Transportation Safety Board is investigating a CN rail train derailment west of Prince George. The board says the train was carrying coal near Vanderhoof when it went off the tracks. No injuries have been reported, and the company says no dangerous goods were involved. And now the forecast. Rainfall warnings are in place for sections of Vancouver Island and Metro Vancouver, with up to 120 millimeters over the next 2 days. On the north coast, rain this afternoon with strong winds and a high of 8. Highs around -1 and clearing in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, mainly cloudy with a high of 4. Highs from -1 to +3 and cloudy in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 4 degrees. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, rain this afternoon with highs around 9. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thank you for joining us on radio, television, live streaming as well on TikTok. Good to have you on all the platforms. Well, Italy is getting ready for Olympics fanfare all next week. Meanwhile, we in BC, we're gearing up for our own giant sporting event. Just a few months until the FIFA World Cup kicks off. Now, games will be held in the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. Here in Vancouver, the first game takes place June 13th. Well, we're asking you, do you think our region is prepared to welcome the estimated 350,000 visitors? If you're a resident or a business person, how do you think that time will be for you? What are your own plans? And are you hoping to participate in a local event? You can call us now, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, or 1-800-825-5950. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca or leave a comment if you're watching us on TikTok. Now, yesterday, the City of Surrey and the Surrey and White Rock Board of Trade held a workshop for businesses to prepare for the events. And joining us in studio is Joslyn Young, the CEO of the Surrey and White Rock Board of Trade. Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Michelle.
Thank you for coming in. I understand the event was sold out.
It was. We had a wait list of about 30 people. So people are excited. They want to participate. They want to get involved.
Yes, and so how do they get involved? What's in it for businesses in Surrey and White Rock?
Well, we hope the entire region outside of Vancouver gets involved because this is an opportunity for all of us and including our business community. So what we're hoping for is that people join the celebration. We want them to think about new menu ideas, new activations, engagements with their customers, and also to welcome the international stage to our communities. So that means being prepared for visitors, 45% who are from outside of North America.
The games are in Vancouver. How likely is it that they will travel to Surrey and White Rock?
It's actually very likely. So the downtown core hotels will pretty much be booked up by the teams, their families, the folks putting on the FIFA event. And so the fans will actually have to travel. And we have a great TransLink line ready to take them out to Surrey and White Rock. And we're prepared with an international community of our own who is happy to have these visitors come and see us and learn about this region, because in the next 5 years, they'll want to come back and visit us as tourists.
Wow. And so, right, okay, so that's what you're saying is that because of, we've been hearing about that lack of hotel space in downtown Vancouver. We've heard it from, groups like Destination Vancouver saying that we just haven't kept up with the need. So you're saying that overfill, that spillover will head over to
Absolutely.
outside.
Exactly. And if the fans have an interest in the natural world, which British Columbia is known for, they'll also want to take advantage of our environment.
So what kinds of preparations do businesses need to be making right now then? What were the resources and information that they got yesterday?
So what they need to know is that they can't use the FIFA trademark without
it's quite
permission.
strict, right?
Very strict. But you can use general terminology. So if you want to dive into the details, which we do encourage you to do, the City of Vancouver and City of Surrey have that information online. And there's a little booklet you can read and understand what the rules are. In general, you can't put out a sign that says, come and watch the FIFA World Cup at our restaurant, but you can say, welcome fans, come watch soccer here. Right? So if you keep it broad, then you are in a safe space.
What kinds of organized events are the City of Surrey and White Rock planning?
Well, we haven't announced it yet. The city
But you will right now? Oh, how exciting.
I'm not a City of Surrey representative, the Board of Trade, but we understand that we're looking forward to having a very big event that will give people south of the Fraser somewhere to go if they're not interested in traveling with the thousands of people that will be entering Vancouver.
Right. Stay within your own limits as well. Let's put out the numbers again. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We're asking you if you think our region is ready to welcome the hundreds of thousands of visitors coming in for the FIFA World Cup games. If you're a resident or you're a business owner, we would love to hear from you. Or what do you think that time will be like for you in June? How are you preparing? And are you hoping to participate in these events as well? Is that something that you're excited about? Love to hear from you. 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. My guest is Joslyn Young, CEO of the Surrey and White Rock Board of Trade. And I say local events because it's going to be hard to get into a game.
It is. There were, I think, several hundreds of thousands of people who tried.
Yep.
And who might be just coming to travel with the teams. That's apparently a thing, where they'll come, they'll watch their team play here, and then they'll follow them to the next place. But teams like New Zealand, which will have 2 games here, will stay. And so I think the New Zealand fans will be around and want to look for some entertainment and maybe a little break out into the nature that we have here and enjoy our local sites.
What kind of economic impact do you think these events will have?
Well, there's expected to be about $2 million in spending during the just over a month that people are here. And then when you look broadly out to the next 5 years, we're looking at nearly $2 billion in spending from visitors. So there's a huge impact to our local economy and the business community, and the profits that they can see from this event really depend on them and how much they want to welcome the visitors that are coming.
Do you see this having, a similar legacy, let's say the Olympics? I know there's the infrastructure legacy that those 2010 games had as well, but down the road, what might be that legacy, whether it is encouraging more sport or more tourism, as you say, to your part of the region, but what might be the long-term legacy?
I think that when you are put on the world stage at the largest event in sport history, I think it's the biggest one that's ever been had before. There used to be 32 teams, now something like 48 are competing.
Biggest sport in the world, I think, yeah.
Everyone will be watching us. So it's even bigger than the Olympics in some ways, in that people will be wanting to learn about this area. If they're coming here or if they see something that they like, they'll say to themselves, well, I think I should come to British Columbia and check it out. We already have a great tourism scene. We're set up for it. We know what we're doing. So I think we'll see the benefits in that way.
Now, as you say that, it reminded me yesterday I was at a local ramen shop, and lo and behold, right beside me were two people visiting from Seattle.
Yes.
Asking about where was a happy hour they could go to, and this is middle of January, so there you go. Nowhere near the World Cup yet. We have an email here from Dave who writes, I just tuned in, but I can't imagine there will be enough accommodation for the expected crowd. And this is my take from Fanny Bay, which is the oysters that I recommended to the Seattle visitors, David. Thank you. Yes, so back to the accommodation issue. I mean, it is an issue. How concerned are you about that?
We are always pushing for more hotel space in Surrey and White Rock, and also more event space. It's been a challenge for our region. We want people to be able to enjoy where they live and bring in visitors to see them and stay where they live. There's likely going to be a push in the Airbnb. There are people who say, I'm just renting out my house and leaving town. And I'm hoping that the hotels are prepared. I think that they are. They're already thinking about it. They were at our event last night. So is it a challenge? Yes. And could people be out as far as Abbotsford? Likely so. We've got people traveling between Seattle and Vancouver, and Surrey is right in the middle. They're right at the border. So I think people will be getting creative with where they stay and making new friends.
Sure. On the Airbnb push, to relax some of those short-term rules, what have you heard about that in terms of whether the province might actually do that?
I haven't heard anything thus far, but I know that the province is involved in the planning of FIFA, and they are considering all aspects of how this influx of tourists will impact our downtown core here in Vancouver and also in the rest of the region. So I would imagine that some creativity is on the books.
Let's take a call here. We're asking you, do you think our region is prepared for that influx of visitors? About 350,000 estimated to be coming for the FIFA World Cup games. Is our region ready? What do you think it'll take to be ready? And for yourself as a resident or a business person, what do you think that time will look like for you? Our number is 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950, or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Again, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Paul is calling us from Princeton, and this is Paul Adams, who's head of the BC Rural Health Network, who's been on our show before. Hi, Paul. Welcome back.
Good afternoon, Michelle.
Thanks for calling in. Yeah, what are your thoughts about the influx of visitors coming?
Our concern is really about the 500 people who are traveling into Vancouver on a daily basis for medical need, and the lack of planning that is in place for those folks and how they're going to find affordable or any accommodation when they have a significant medical appointment within Vancouver.
Yes, this has been raised as a concern when it comes to huge events and a potential surge in health emergencies. What do you know of how that has unfolded in other jurisdictions?
So there is two elements. One is the planning around the pressures on the existing emergency medical systems in regards to transportation and ER availability. But the other piece is all of these people who come in for diagnostics and extended stays, whether that's from transplant surgery or from other significant tertiary and quaternary level care appointments.
From
And
other
their
parts of
states-
BC, from rural BC.
From all over BC,
Yeah,
and
okay.
even from the Yukon, and we have a projection of zero availability and room rates hitting $2,000 per night. And we see there's a need here for having a short-term plan, but again, these are known events. We need to do a better job in accommodating the needs there's a federal responsibility here under the Canada Health Act in ensuring that everybody has reasonable access to care. And if you cannot afford to be in Vancouver for a life-changing procedure, then what is our backup plan?
What have you heard from the province on that, Paul?
So we're working closely with the Ministry of Health and with the Premier's office, and we've had several meetings directly over the last couple of years. There is, again, a desire to create solutions, but we haven't seen it come about. And I think that the focus that the Prime Minister has placed on bringing Canada together and ensuring that we uphold principles of being Canadian, such as the Canada Health Act, in high regard, requires the federal government to come forward and make sure the resources are available for the province that's facing economic hardship and a $12 billion deficit, to ensure that finances are available so that we can put plans in place which are meaningful. And currently the plan seems to be that patients need to be the ones responsible for planning in advance. But a phone call can come at any minute, Michelle, and you don't know when you need to be in Vancouver.
Yeah, Paul, it's very good to hear from you. And I know this has been an issue that's been raised. So thank you very much for raising it today. Good to hear from you again. That's Paul in Princeton.
Thank you.
You take care. Our next caller is Alicia in Campbell River. Hi, Alicia. What are your thoughts? Are we ready for the games? Is our region ready? What's it going to take to get ready?
I actually just have a quick concern. I'm concerned that the U.S. has announced that it will send ICE to the Olympics in Italy. And I just hope that Canada doesn't allow ICE to attend the FIFA games in a security role. And yeah, I have that as a concern, I guess.
Yeah, Alicia, thank you very much for that. And yes, from what I heard in the news as well, that some ICE officers will be accompanying the U.S. delegation as, I believe, consultants to the security team there. That's the latest that I heard and there's some opposition in Italy to that. Heard that on the news today. So this event, it's a huge sporting event, but geopolitics is going to be casting a shadow over it, right? How do you deal with that as a business?
Well, most businesses in Canada are small to mid-sized, 98%. And so if you are a family business and you are just trying to pay your employees and have customers come and have a good experience, that's primarily your concern. Of course, those geopolitical impacts are something that the rest of us do think about. When it comes to the business community, we would expect the government here to implement and uphold our local rules of law and governance. And if you see someone outside of their jurisdiction taking over, then we've got a bigger problem. But I don't imagine that would actually take place.
It's interesting to see how intertwined the events and the larger political issues are, and you may see that unfold coming up as well. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about the preparations from your point of view.
Thank you, Michelle.
That's Joslyn Young, the CEO of the Surrey and White Rock Board of Trade. It's now just about 12:50. You're with BC Today. Well, this week, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a GST rebate top-up, this to battle food inflation, and we talked about this on the show. We got a whole bunch of emails on that as well. SB writes in North Cowichan, all of the meals for my family are now based on what is on sale. Where we used to buy island chicken breast, now we only buy it when it is on sale. Same with beef. I never used to shop at big box stores, always prioritizing local first, but times have changed. Duncan writes, the people who control our food system are only concerned with money. Unfortunately, a tax rebate does nothing to address this root cause. Meanwhile, we're hearing people like Avi Lewis and Emily Lowen echo the ideas of Zoran Mamdani with real solutions such as a public option for groceries. I don't want this to be a partisan issue, but only certain people are talking about it. Let's get on with it and make sure people can afford to eat. Kathy writes, throwing crumbs to poor people while propping up corporations who don't pay their share. Mark Carney is more supportive to banks and corporations than the people who will be impacted most by his economic policies. Wake up and look behind who gets the biggest welfare. It's called corporate welfare. Michaela writes from Victoria, I agree that the benefit will be helpful to many low-income Canadians, particularly folks such as myself living on a fixed income. However, it is a Band-Aid solution. We need to increase financial supports for our most vulnerable community members. Julie writes, climate change is one reason food costs are rising. Wildfires, flooding, and droughts certainly affect food production, but we're not meeting the crisis. And Amber writes, I was diagnosed with celiac disease about 15 years ago. Gluten-free food is a lot more expensive. Celiac Canada is advocating for a flat refundable tax credit. If the federal government could adopt this change, it would make a huge difference. Thank you for your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca. 12:51 now, and a big meeting today between Premier David Eby and Prime Minister Mark Carney. And this was ahead of a dinner between Carney and other premiers as well. This morning, Carney also met with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Now, Eby and Smith have been at odds over a proposed pipeline to BC's North Coast. Within the last hour, the Premier did speak to reporters, and our CBC Provincial Affairs reporter Katie DeRosa was there and listened, and she joins me now from Victoria. Hello, Katie.
Hi, Michelle.
So tell us about what the Premier had to say following his meeting back east with the Prime Minister.
Yeah, well, David Eby, Mark Carney, and Danielle Smith all, sat before the cameras before their meeting, put on smiling faces, talked about ski mountains and whether the skiing was better in Alberta and BC. But, the elephant in the room that they didn't talk about at that, before reporters was the pipeline, for the proposed pipeline from Alberta's oil sands to BC's northwest coast. They did talk about that in the meeting, and we know that because the Premier spoke to reporters just as he left the meeting. And he said it was a productive meeting, and here's a little bit of how he described it.
Alberta has committed to keeping us posted on their work as they try to identify a proponent for their project. And a big part of the conversation was about Western Canada's role in the Canadian economy and how we're driving it forward. So I'm sure we'll find common ground there, and look forward to seeing what Alberta comes up with.
What are your red lines for the pipeline?
So, so the Premier obviously noting there's still no proponent, but he's taking more of a conciliatory tone, a softer tone, I would say, compared to the, more fiery comments he's made here in Victoria. Probably after that meeting, they're trying to talk on what they agree on as opposed to just going at each other as like a war of words. But I just will note that he was basically saying, well, Alberta's going to communicate with us, and he was a lot softer in his opposition to that pipeline.
Well, it's interesting because I've been hearing about unity a lot today, right? For Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, all talking about even though we have disagreements over specific issues, we plan to work together. I mean, what was the sense there from David Eby about that? You just touched on the pipeline question, but given those opposing positions, what did he have to say about unity among the premiers?
Yeah, well, the Premier also spoke to media before his meeting with Mark Carney, and he praised him for his speech in Davos. He says he's blazing a trail in terms of interprovincial trade and diversifying our trade with other countries outside the U.S. So a lot of praise, and he mentioned we're from different parties. David Eby, NDP, Mark Carney from the Liberals, but he says he's doing a great job. So we saw unity there, but also among the premiers. Doug Ford was critical of the Prime Minister's deal with China about EVs, but right. They shared a slice of pizza together the other day. So those were the kind
with
of
pineapple on top.
Kind of ties that they're. Yes, exactly. I wouldn't have pineapple, but that's that's just me. But yeah, so I think they are in this meeting trying to find common ground, especially on the trade issue?
Oh, Katie, it sounds like you and I are divided on the pineapple question. Oh, don't worry. I can still work
No
with you.
comment.
We can still work together. But beyond that, the Premier did meet with other people today as well, right? Other federal politicians.
Yeah, so the Premier also met with Public Safety Minister Gary Anand-Sangri and RCMP Commissioner Mike Duhem, and we know they talked about extortion in Surrey. The Premier gave really brief remarks after that meeting, didn't give details of what exactly he asked for or if the RCMP was offering anything, but we know that Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke has been calling for Ottawa to declare extortion-related violence a public emergency. The issue has also been a big major topic in Brampton, Ontario. So, she's saying that the federal government needs to declare an emergency and put more resources into the crisis. The Premier, yesterday I spoke to him on the phone, and he said anything that he agrees with Brenda Locke, that anything that could be done to put more resources into the extortion crisis, he supports. But he will note what he wants to see is arrests on the ground and changes being made at that level. So we'll have to find out when he does his scrum, probably imminently, with reporters on what more came from that meeting.
Okay, Katie, lots on the table there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle. We'll have pizza with you, half for me and half for you.
We can still unite, I promise. CBC Provincial Affairs reporter Katie DeRosa joining us from Victoria and waiting to see from the Premier, as she mentioned, on more on how that meeting went. We have an email here on our earlier topic. We asked you what your thoughts were on the BC Conservative Party leadership race. 7 candidates, and so we asked you if anyone stood out for you. What do you make of the race so far? Norman writes, I'm alarmed by any political candidate from the so-called outside who runs on having been a successful business person and argues that experience is what a premier needs. This shows a worrisome lack of understanding of the difference between running a company and governing a province. Those who have been private sector leaders have a hard time dealing with broad value differences or with the idea of social well-being rather than profit lines. Thank you very much for your email, Norman, writing us from Prince George. And that's again to do with the BC Conservative Party leadership race. February 15th is the deadline for would-be candidates to sign up. And May 30th is when they will hold their convention to choose a new party leader. We'll watch that here for you on the show.